I really feel like Mayoiga got one of the most unfair shakes in anime history. Not to say that I necessarily think more people should have enjoyed it or scored it higher, but simply that the show got so much shit on the basis of just not being what people thought it was going to be, or otherwise going totally misunderstood. The show is a parody, that much is pretty obvious in retrospect, especially with as much distance as I have from it now, and there's plenty of evidence that this could have been obvious from the beginning by the fact that there were people calling it right from the get-go on anime blogs. I really think that a lot of people literally hated this show because they wanted or expected it to be an edgy horror series, and the entire point of it was to make fun of those shows and to subvert them at every turn for comedy. If you happen to find this brand of meta humor hilarious, then you were probably already laughing right around the minute that a bus full of weirdos who met online were singing like they're on a school trip about a hippopotamus. If you were hoping this would be the prelude to some Angels of Death style edge fest, well, let me tell you, I can't relate to your taste half as well as the other guys. Nearly everyone was unfair to this show, including me. At the time that it concluded, I criticized it for being confusing and weirdly paced, even though there were people who weren't confused at all, and when you recognize the show as a parody, the pacing makes perfect sense. What kind of hypocrite would it make me if I made a whole video defending bathos and rapid tone changes, and loved shows like Kurenai, which tons of people thought were dumb and pointless, while I felt like I understood a level above something like story logic? It's one thing if the show just went over a lot of people's heads, that's fine. It's when people are confronted with this idea and can't cop to it that it's such a disappointment. And yes, I am talking about myself as well. This is me admitting I was wrong, even if I was overall a lot more positive about the show than most, because it's never easy to just admit that you didn't have the ability to get the point. It's much easier to stick to your guns and look for reasons that the show must have been wrong, even if your reasons are vague and non-specific, like that the pacing was bad. I used to say the same thing about Miyazaki films, and I see others levy these criticisms at them all the time. Every Miyazaki film is a goddamn masterpiece at what it's setting out to do. If you understand the intentions and just don't enjoy the movie, that's fine, but if you really believe that this man came to be respected as one of the greatest filmmakers of all time by countless critics around the world just because his movies are pretty, then you're clearly not thinking hard enough. None of this is me telling you that Mayoiga is a good show or trying to defend it from criticism. Frankly, I don't give a shit if you think it's good or bad. I just want you to acknowledge the reasons that others might think it's good. If someone tells you that they think it's hilarious as a parody and you argue that it fails as a horror show, then you're not even having a coherent conversation. If you still think the show is bad even as a parody, then the burden is on you to prove it. Address the series in that lens and figure out how it fails in that sense. This is not at all an unreasonable task, by the way. It should even be easy if the series truly doesn't belong to that genre. I could attempt to make the argument that Ghost in the Shell was a parody, but it would be pretty goddamn hard to convince anyone to so much as entertain the idea, given they'd be more likely amped up after watching to go deep on some existentialism and science fiction musings. If someone comes to you with an argument that Mayoiga is their favorite mecha show, then I won't blame you if you turn up an eyebrow and slowly walk away. But if you can't admit that in a horror show where no one actually dies, and when one guy appears to, the others immediately start referring to him by some comically incorrect names for like half a minute, there might be something else going on, then you're just being stubborn. Look, the reason I'm still thinking about this is that I think it would be a real shame if shows like Mayoiga can't get made because the people who literally miss the point of it shit on it too hard. Plenty of times I've admitted that anime is by and large a sellout medium where taking risks is more punished than not. But anytime I see a vision actually realized as intended to its full capacity and appreciated by its intended audience, I want it to have as much opportunity as it deserves. Mayoiga may not be for everyone, but I'd be really sad if the people who might love it never get around to watching it because of the incredibly low scores it has on social media sites. Cult classics and misunderstood media can only achieve redemption through advocacy. We all know about how Blade Runner was a box office bomb and then later defined the aesthetic of cyberpunk for generations to come. We know how Gundam was largely ignored until its reruns and compilation films and the powerhouse demand which its fans generated for it. Sometimes we just have to think about something and let it stew for a while before all of its flavor starts to come out. Every so often on April Fool's Day, my mom makes these cakes that look exactly like grilled cheese sandwiches, and if you fall for it, the first bite can be absolutely infuriating. But if you ate the whole thing and scored it poorly on the basis that it was a terrible grilled cheese sandwich, then you really would be an April Fool, especially since it's obviously a hilarious cake parody. That's it for today's video. It's short because I spent 6 hours recording the next PCP and Ghibli cast. Look forward to those. Go to my Patreon, go to my playlist, go to my other stuff, go to the description, go everywhere, go to Mars, go to the end of the universe, go past entropy, go past God, go defeat everything. I am launching into space! It tastes just like Gatorade.